Alright, everybody. So, as you all know, for quite a while now, I have been working with Progressive Victory, a group that is dedicated to helping progressive figures on the left get elected all across the country and to preventing Republicans from taking people's rights away. Obviously, one of the big focuses for a while was the fact that the right was attacking contraceptive rights like crazy, but now the right is basically letting the mask slip and outright attacking democracy and like Americans' rights as a whole. So it's kind of expanded to a more all-encompassing sort of focus over the last few months, which is a very good thing considering the fact that the right has a very strong stranglehold on online media. And Progressive Victory has decided to come out with an answer to this. A progressive, left-wing, Democrat-leaning, as opposed to Republican-leaning, response to this. Because the internet is basically, controlled by Republican, opposition, essentially, right? And so it's nice to finally have a group that is trying to fight against that. And this plan, this project that has been launched, is a clip channel. Now, this clip channel is called PV Spotlight, and it is going to have clips of me, content creators like Hunter Avalone, Pixie, Dylan Burns, who else? Destiny. I'm trying to think of other people. I'm blanking right now on names, but tons of content creators that you guys will all know. People that I'm friends with, people that I'm not even, super close to. I think Vosh will have clips there. I believe Keffels will even have clips there. There are people that'll have their clips posted there that I'm not even super friendly with. But this is the PV Spotlight Clips channel. And many of the clips that go up there will also be my clips, too. So if you want to see... Not currently logged in. Oh, I'm not logged in on my own website. What the fuck? What? But I am. Okay, there we go. I had to post it in, a different window, I guess. That's weird. Anyway. There we go. So yeah, there's the link right there to the PV Spotlight channel. Please go subscribe. It would really, really help a lot if you would. We're trying to grow a dope, big-ass, we're trying to build a big-ass clips channel here. It's going to be sort of like a hub channel for a bunch of different lefty content creators. And there is a very bright future for this. Obviously, we've got, here if I show you, we've got one of my videos here on the front page. We've got Pixie debates Michael Knowles on abortion. Actually, that's worth taking a look at. You guys want to take a look at this? Here's a good example of the type of content you can expect from the Progressive Victory PV Spotlight channel. This is Pixie, who you guys may know. She's a friend of the channel, going on to a podcast and debating Michael Knowles on the topic of abortion rights. Let's take a look.
So
Clean
I
intro.
think when it comes to feminism, something that a lot of feminists fight for is abortion rights for women.
Oh, for those who don't know, this is the Whatever podcast. It's one of those, Andrew Tate, style pod. It's a Manosphere Red Pill podcast, basically.
So I think I'd like to touch on that for a little bit. So a good jumping off point for each of you. What is each of your basic stance on abortion? We'll have you guys go first, then we'll have Michael respond.
Yeah, I have very mixed feelings and thoughts when it comes to abortion. I am, generally speaking, pro-choice. Do I think abortion at any stage is moral? No, not necessarily. However, I do have strong reservations about the government being able to dictate when exactly, or just deciding let's not have any pro-choice, pro-life all the way. I have very strong reservations of the government being able to dictate a law to that nature. So
that's a really good way to go with it. She's taking the correct route. When you deal with these people, especially someone like Michael Knowles, who tries to come off a little more on the libertarian side, it is best to sort of take this libertarian position before he can. Make him be forced to defend the idea that the state has to force you to do a thing. Make him argue in favor of the state forcing you to do shit. Also, I do find it hilarious that Michael Knowles is sitting next to what I am pretty certain is a sex doll. I'm pretty sure that is a sex doll.
So I have a mixed bag, right?
Right, no, there's a woman moving there, but there is a sex doll like on the side there. There is a sex doll at this table. I saw it a second ago. In the opening. Yeah. This is a sex doll. Michael Knowles is sitting next to a sex doll, I'm pretty sure. They put it in a blue wig. Dog. That's crazy. Why do they have a fucking, like, rubber doll at the table? Wearing a hentai shirt.
Feminists fight for is abortion rights for women.
And a cigar in its mouth. What the fuck? Like, I didn't notice it first because it actually looks pretty real, but that's like an actual sex doll. It's like a real doll.
So I think I'd like to touch on that for a little bit. So a good jumping off point for each of you, what is each of your
Very mixed. Do I exactly or like just deciding like, oh, like let's not have any pro-choice, pro-life all the way. I have like very strong reservations
this
of
is
the
the
government
sex
being
doll.
able to dictate a law
My
to
bad.
that nature. So I have a mixed bag right now. Do you believe in contraception?
I believe it exists, but I would strongly discourage.
They've got her wearing the fucking Nazi, like, what's that one pointed helmet called? I forget what it's called. They've got this lady wearing that. Okay, so for those that don't know, obviously this isn't the case for, like, the people who go on there to argue and debate, but, like, if you're ever wondering why these big red pill podcasts have these, like, women scantily clad just sitting there silently in the background, sometimes going on there to just, like, get bullied by the dudes, it's because most of them are OnlyFans girls, and they end up seeing spikes of thousands of % in their revenue from going on these red pill podcasts. It may be all about how, like, oh yeah, you're worthless to us. We don't care about you. We wouldn't even jack off to you. We think you're ugly and worthless. But nonetheless, the audiences of these red pill podcasts flock to these girls' OnlyFans after seeing them on these shows and sub to them and bring them thousands of dollars, tens of thousands of dollars in increased revenue. This girl is making a shitload off of her OnlyFans just by sitting there and being on the screen. It is insane. The German cavalry helmet, yeah. It is insane how much money they make off of it. So if you're ever wondering, yes, they are just soullessly farming money for their OnlyFans. These random models they bring in to sit in the background of their, like, red pill anti-woman podcasts.
Discourage it.
Even for married couples who want to, like, child plan?
Yeah, I think couples should be open to life.
Even though there's
I
like,
think married couples should be open to
even
life.
though there's like an overwhelming amount of data that suggests that contraception lowers like abortion rates, basically, right? If
Well,
a person
I
never
don't.
gets
Yeah,
pregnant,
I think people should have more babies, and once they conceive the babies, they should also not murder the babies. But I
So you got to force him into the, like, what she is arguing right now is, statistically speaking, when people have access to contraception, abortion rates plummet because people don't have unwanted pregnancies. They have wanted pregnancies instead, usually. Obviously, there's always going to be unwanted pregnancies when, you know, rape and stuff exists and, you know, that kind of thing. But, like, the more readily available family planning healthcare is, the less abortions there are. If he wants to stop abortions, then he would be in favor of more contraceptive care, but he's against contraceptive care because what he actually wants to prevent is women exploring their sexuality and having bodily autonomy. So his goal is twofold. When women get pregnant, he wants them to be shackled to their obligation to carry the pregnancy to term. However, he does not want them to be able to prevent said pregnancy, because if they can, then they're able to have sex as they please, use contraceptives to make it safe, and have very little to no risk to having sex. Which to them, they see as there being no barrier to women having as much sex as they want. And there's nothing that upsets conservatives more than the idea of women having as much sex as they want. That is a nightmare scenario for conservatives. Women having the amount of sex that they want to have.
yeah, I don't.
Wait, so you
Okay,
think
but-
married couples should just every time they have sex should get pregnant or should be aiming towards getting pregnant?
You know,
open to
believe it or
preg-
not, it usually doesn't work quite like that, but I think they should have more kids, yeah. Totally.
Is he suggesting anal? Or like the pull-out method, which is not at all useful? Like, is that what he's suggesting? Literally what he is trying to argue right now is that the government should ban your access to contraceptive, like, stuff like condoms and birth control, because that promotes, because he wants to promote people having babies. People having babies doesn't solve any problems. There's this, like, conservative obsession. There's a reason why conservative demagogues use this as a talking point, and it's because it's compelling. An insane amount of people are now convinced that America is facing an underpopulation crisis and that our birth rates are dropping, and that if we don't, like, increase the amount of babies being born, then, like, America is going to fall like the Roman Empire. A scary amount of Americans have been genuinely convinced into this, that, like, we need to raise domestic birth rates. And it's like, so you say we need to raise domestic birth rates, and you've given me a list of reasons that could all be solved with immigration. Why can't we allow more immigration? That solves the problem. And then they have a meltdown because they don't want to let brown people in. So the fact is that these guys want to engage in government-mandated forced birth. They want to ban contraceptives to control the sexuality of women. And they want to frame it as a libertarian position.
And there also, by the way, there are, again, it's morally controversial, but there are modes of a more natural process that would be able to quite accurately time a woman's
Until we're
menstrual
at the
cycle.
point where we're getting rid of abortion, then are you?
Wait, what did he just say? Wait, hold on. What did he just say?
Are modes of a more natural process that would be able to quite accurately time a woman's
Until
menstrual
we're at
cycle.
the point where we're getting.
Okay, he's trying to claim that we're getting to the point, quote unquote, where we can accurately time a woman's menstrual cycle and know if she's missed a period, so that, like, there wouldn't be a late term abortion. This is him basically trying to defend the argument of the laws that ban abortions after 6 weeks, because, as we all know, overwhelmingly, the vast majority of women do not know they are pregnant until after 6 weeks. That is the famous stat, which is why conservatives made the ban after 6 weeks, so it effectively ban all abortions. He is now trying to defend, actually, that's not true. Most women can know if they're pregnant now. Yes, Michael Knowles should have been a late-term abortion, or an any-term abortion, or a swallow, frankly.
Getting rid of abortion, then are you then in favor of contraception?
No,
because
well,
you're saving lives?
I also reject the premise that you've just made, which is that contraception reduces abortion rates. I think, there's a very easy.
I hope she questions him on how he feels about life-saving procedures like hysterectomies and removals of ectopic pregnancies and what have you being, like, banned and viewed legally as abortions in several red states right now due to this policy and this movement. And the fact that right now in states like Missouri and Arkansas, a woman has to literally be bleeding out and dying of septic shock on the hospital table in order for them to engage in that life-saving care, because it's legally considered an abortion to essentially, quote unquote, ruin a woman's reproductive rights to save her life. It's really fucking horrifying what some of these Republican states have caused women to go through who are dealing with reproductive health issues, because their life-saving care is literally illegal until they're dying of septic shock.
Easy way to cherry pick those data, because you can say, well, in this very small subset of data where we give condoms to college kids or whatever, they have lower abortion rates. But broadly speaking,
in this very low subsect of scenarios, maybe, where you give college students condoms, maybe you get lower abortion rates. No, overwhelmingly, the vast majority of data, all of the data, the consensus of data, shows that when you give people more access to contraceptives, they have less unwanted pregnancies. Less unwanted pregnancies leads to less abortion. Conservatives kind of rely on this implication that because abortion is so evil, those that support it must also be evil. Michael Knowles is arguing from this perspective that those that are trying to get abortions usually are evil people who want to kill the baby. That's the implication. When the real when the reality of it is that abortion, even if you do view it as murder of a baby, is happening because people had an unwanted pregnancy. And if you give people the tools to easily prevent unwanted pregnancies, that is going to reduce the amount of abortions far more than banning it will. Because the fact is, and this is also proven overwhelmingly, banning abortions doesn't stop them. They continue. They just happen less safely and without the supervision of medical guidelines and oversight. It just becomes more dangerous. They don't stop. It's like banning drugs doesn't stop the drugs. It just makes them more dangerous. Legalizing weed makes it safer to buy weed now. You're less likely to get robbed or shot when you go to your weed dealer these days if you live in a state where weed is legal, because your weed dealer is a guy who's like a nerdy dude with like a fucking Goku shirt on, who's like high as fuck behind the counter, who, like, just having a great time, loving life, ready to sell you some weed.
The past 60 years, we've had a proliferation of contraception, and we've had a proliferation of abortion. The rates have spiked, and they've lowered it sometimes, but they've remained fairly high. And the reason is more fundamental than statistics, which is that we have a mentality now that sex can come without contraception.
He's outright lying right now. Abortion rates go up and down based on A, how readily accessible family planning care is, and B, how able people are to have families. Gen Z and millennials have notoriously low birth rates because Gen Z and millennials are living through a notoriously fucked up era of economic decline. Biden admittedly is doing a pretty good job with the economy, but we are still coming off of decades of the results of Reagan-era economics, okay? Like, Reagan destroyed the U.S. economy, and we have been suffering the consequences of it as the consequences have gotten worse and worse and worse for decades upon decades upon decades. And young people who have known nothing but those consequences do not want to go through the trouble or the financial strain of raising a child, or bring a child into a world where they can't guarantee them a comfortable life, for that matter. It's arguably somewhat cruel.
Consequences. And so condoms can be very effective, and whatever like women put inside themselves and what that can be very effective too. But sometimes
I love that. He's so uneducated on the topic, he doesn't even know what kind of implants there are for birth control for women. So there are obviously like uterine implants you can get, like IUDs. And you can also get, I know that a girl that I dated once had an arm implant, and I won't elaborate how, but I can confirm it works. Yeah, it's like a little implant that was under her arm, like in the back of her arm, and it would, like, on a timer, I guess, dose the birth control into her body. She wouldn't even have to remember to take a pill. And yeah, arm implant seems to be one of the better ways of doing it, but there's a lot of interesting forms of birth control, but obviously Michael Knowles does not care about educating himself on this thing he's against because he's a conservative propagandist. He gets paid to repeat what is said to him into a earpiece.
it's not. And by accepting the mentality that sterile sex is a right, it then implies a right to kill the baby.
There you go. So that's basically the argument. Sterile sex is not a right. Humans do not have the right to sterile sex, is his argument. The idea that sex can be had without the potential consequence of pregnancy is, in his mind, something that humans do not deserve the right to do. That if women have access to sterile sex as an option, then that is the only option that they will pick, and that is an immoral thing that they will pick, if they ever do. The fact is, conservatives' truest, deepest nightmare is women having sex as much as they want.
Maybe so you don't actually have to face the consequences when it happens.
I think I pushed back on the idea that like people were not having sex prior to contraception because
I never suggested that.
Okay, I thought it was suggested because when you're saying like, oh no, abortion rates have gone up since contraception, I'm not sure if that's true.
They were having kids before contraception.
And they were also getting abortions before contraception.
No. I mean, you know, the other reason why it's, I think, silly to try to separate these two phenomena is they occurred basically at the same time. So you had legal abortion beginning in 1973 with Roe v. Wade, though it had been...
So the way Pixie needs to push back on this is by asking, do you think that if abortions and birth control existed before they existed in our world, people wouldn't have gotten them? Do you think the desire for abortions and birth control, that market exists because it's available rather than there being a market for it and its availability being what's desired? Because he's trying to claim that the existence and availability creates the desire for it, not vice versa, which is like the most deranged thing ever for a capitalist to say. Like that's like fundamentally opposed to like the number, like that's the opposite of supply and demand, like the number one rule of economics, like baby brain, like first grade economics, supply demand, like step one, the foundation.
Legalized in other states prior. This was, the 1960s and 1970s, the sexual revolution, when contraception became much, much, much more popular and available, and abortion did at the same time too. So it's simply a fact.
So yeah, he's trying to claim that there was an ideological revolution in the 1960s that happened with abortion and birth control becoming available, and that's the only reason why it's desired. That at no point before the 1960s was there any desire for family planning. Now, to be fair, prior to the 1960s, America was in an unprecedented era of economic, economic prosperity. So, like, if you were a high schooler growing up in the 50s, your future looked so fucking bright. Like, you were going to go to college, or hell, you could just get your high school diploma and go make a income that would be able to get you a house. You could marry your high school sweetheart and have kids at like 22. And like by the time you're in your 30s, your kids are going to be like, already old enough to go to the park, and you're going to like have kids young and be able to have fun with your kids young and see them grow old. Like, that was the dream. That was the life that people in the 1950s up until the end of the 1960s had in front of them. But then the rest of the world recovered from World War II. European manufacturing skyrocketed, and the U.S. stopped being the powerhouse of manufacturing that it had been for decades, since World War II. And that American dream kind of started to disappear a little bit. And next thing you know, you had Reagan getting elected on the promise of making America great again, and he destroyed it all. He basically ensured we wouldn't see any semblance of that type of economic prosperity in America ever again. Well, at least not until any time in the future, maybe.
Contraception became more popular. The abortion rate went up. Now, you might say, well, those are disconnected phenomena. Okay, maybe they are, but they certainly occurred at the same time.
At least to my understanding, and maybe we can even search this up right now.
So conservatives kind of operate with this implication that movements brainwash people into wanting things instead of movements coming from people wanting things, right? Like, obviously, this doesn't apply to their own movements, right? They describe their movements as this, like, righteous, awesome thing of people wanting, like, the people fighting for what they believe in. But when it comes to the left having a movement, it's always the idea that a left-wing movement has brainwashed people into supporting it, rather than ever there being this implication or outright stating of the reality that people want things and that makes them support movements. They live in a delusional backwards world where everything the left does is evil and awful, and everything the right does is justified and perfect, even if they are blatantly lying.
People did have abortions,
and obviously
or did have a high rate of abortion before even like Roe v. Wade. What would happen is that they were like more like back alley abortions, illegal abortions, such abortions that like basically put the mother's life in danger.
No, none of that's true. They were having abortion.
No, you.
It wasn't at a particularly high rate. The rate spiked after Roe v. Wade. And it is true sometimes women died from back alley abortions. There's a fake statistic that went around that was cooked up by the abortion industry, which said that thousands of...
There we have it. When conservatives know that the data is against them, and they are an effective rhetorician, they will oftentimes try to get ahead of the response by saying, yes, the data that disagrees with my argument, it was actually cooked up by the abortion industry. The abortion industry. For the record, these people will never let you know it, but places like Planned Parenthood make less than 5% of their income off of abortions. Less than like 5% of like less than 10% of the services they offer are abortions. Like, these places do not have an industry off of abortions. Abortions are not like a profitable, like, big money generating like big pharma industry, okay? They're just not. They aren't. This is a fantasy.
Women a year were dying of abortions just before Roe v. Wade. Dr. Bernard Nathanson, who was the head of NARAL, the Abortion Rights League, admitted they just made that statistic up out of thin air. And we can fact check it because we have the statistics from the CDC. So the year before...
Let's fact check Michael Knowles here.
Wasn't at a particularly high rate. The rate spiked after Roe v. Wade. And it is true sometimes women died from back alley abortions. There's a fake statistic that went around that was cooked up by the abortion industry, which said that thousands of women a year were dying of abortions just before Roe v. Wade. Dr. Bernard Nathanson, who was the head of...
Bernard Nathanson. So you've got an anti-abortion website called with an article called "How the Abortion Movement Started with Deceit and Lies." Pre-Roe abortion statistics were mostly fabricated by a Twitter post. The Big Lie: Thousands of illegal abortion deaths. Is this like a real... yes, a Catholicism website. The Life Institute: Illegal Abortion. Oh, here it is. Nope, I found out what's happening. Yep, good thing I fact-checked this. Bernard Nathanson: A Life Transformed by Truth. Yep, so this guy is an ex-abortion doctor who has joined the conservative grift and has basically made a career out of lying about the abortion, like, practice in order to, like, get conservative dollars. Tomorrow morning at St. Patrick's Cathedral, Archbishop Timothy Dolan will celebrate a mass of Christian burial for a giant of the pro-life movement, Dr. Bernard Nathanson. Few people, if any, did more than Bernard Nathanson to undermine the right to life of unborn children by turning abortion from an unspeakable crime into a constitutionally protected liberty. Someday, when our laws reform to honor the dignity and protect the right to life of every member of the human family, including children in the womb, historians will observe the few people did more than Bernard Nathanson to achieve that reversal. Dr. Nathanson, the son of a distinguished medical practitioner and professor who specialized in obstetrics and gynecology, had his first involvement with abortions as a medical student at McGill University in Montreal. Having impregnated a girlfriend, he arranged and paid for illegal abortion. Many years later, he would mark this episode as his introductory excursion into the satanic world of abortion. So yeah, he basically became a Christian nut job and started lying about the abortion, like, practicing, like, clinics and stuff to join with, like, the right wing. He's also dead. So literally just a commonly repeated conservative, like, talking point that has absolutely no basis on anything other than, like, Catholic religious forums is, like, the only places where any information on this are. Like, literally websites with Catholic in the URL.
NARAL, the Abortion Rights League, admitted they just made that statistic up out of thin air. And we can fact check it because we have the statistics from the CDC. So the year before Roe v. Wade made abortion legal nationally, do you know how many women died?
So he's just literally lying here, as usual.
Of back alley abortions?
I don't have a specific number from the top of my head.
39 is the number. And do you know how many?
Let's check that. I know this isn't meant to be like a whole segment about this, but I do kind of feel obligated to fact check this stuff. Plus, I like fact checking conservative lies because I always learn something new. That's just good to have in my back pocket, you know? Like, maybe a conservative dares to lie about the same thing to my face in a debate, and I can be like, "Oh, you dumb motherfucker, I know that one," and get them on the spot. That's my hope. Let's see. Unsafe abortion, unnecessary maternal mortality. This is from the National Library of Medicine. Every year, worldwide, about 42 million women with unintended pregnancies choose abortion, and nearly half of these procedures, 20 million, are unsafe. Some 68,000 women die of unsafe abortions annually, making it one of the leading causes of maternal mortality at 13%. Michael Knowles is a fucking liar. Fact check everything these people say. It never ends up being the case that, like, I fact check some shit they said to back up their argument, and I'm like, oh fuck, they were right about this one, I guess. Like, fuck, I guess I gotta, I guess I gotta give them the props on that one. I guess they didn't lie about that one. Every time I fact check them, I don't just find out that they're stretching the truth. I find out that they are blatantly lying. And not just that, but that the truth is surprisingly easy to find with a simple Google search from like a very well-reputable medical journal as well.
How many women died of legal abortions? 24. And so almost the same, but you'd say, well, it's a little bit higher for the...
Literally tens of thousands of women worldwide every year. Literally the leading cause of maternal death is unsafe, legal abortions.
Illegal abortions, except that if you look at the number of states that had legal abortion versus illegal abortion, if you control for that variability, it comes out to almost exactly the same number, and it was a very, very low number. So, there wouldn't be a recommendation of legal abortion.
To my understanding right now.
What a ghoul that he's lying and turning tens of thousands of deaths into dozens of deaths for the sake of a political narrative. You have to understand, these people don't care about life. This guy who claims to be pro-life is now minimizing the deaths of tens of thousands of women per year to support a fucking narrative. A narrative that's all centered around just trying to control women's sexuality, and that is literally fucking it.
If we decide to like to take a state or a county where one county has a greater amount of contraceptive access, promotes it more, teaches kids about contraceptive use, versus a county that there isn't that necessarily same level of sex education, the one that has the less amount of sex education, contraceptive access, would have higher amounts of abortion. Do you dispute that?
The one that has higher, did you say the one that has...
So she's making the argument right now that if you break it down on a county-by-county level, you can actually look at where school districts that have better sex education standards see less teen and young pregnancies and less abortions in those districts. And you can see the rates of abortion and unwanted young teen pregnancy, and just teen pregnancy in general. You can see the spikes between borders between different school districts, where one school district teaches sex ed a lot more, younger and more inclusively, while another district might be a little more prudish about it, right?
Higher rates of sex education would have higher rates of abortion?
No, the one that has higher rates of sex education and higher rates of contraceptive use will have less abortions than the one where there's no sex ed. Basically, places that have less sex ed have higher abortions.
Well, it depends. It depends on if we're talking about a
nope, it doesn't
community
depend.
That is
doesn't depend.
Strongly discourages contraception.
Data doesn't depend. This is the thing. When conservatives don't like that, when conservatives know the data isn't on their side, they have to start muddying the water and dragging you into hypotheticals and anecdotes. You've got data. You've got facts and science to back up your position. They don't. And they need to find a way to bring you down to their level of stupidity and argue with them on it. Do not let them. Make it very clear that you have data to back up your positions. They have feelings. They have little made-up stories and I think, in my world, in my made-up scenario, when you've got data to back up your worldview.
Sex and abortion, that would be less likely. If we're talking about a community that has very low rates of religiosity and low rates of getting married, but also low rates of sex education, which is just kind of liberal sexual revolution teaching, then maybe you would have higher rates of abortion there. I don't dispute that at all. I mean, we live in a culture now that is broadly supportive of abortion and of contraception, including religious communities. But if you, to use my own group of religious people, if you look at Catholics compared to the rest of the country, and then if you look at traditional Catholics, guys who like the Latin Mass and smells and bells compared to regular Catholics, the rates of divorce plummet. The rates of abortion plummet.
So, something interesting about conservatives pointing to divorce rates is that among religious communities, especially the more hardcore religious communities, it is true, divorce rates are lower. However, in these communities, it is also illegal to divorce your partner if you're particularly a woman. So if you're in a very tight-knit, hyper-Christian community, or like a Jehovah's Witness community, or like there's a lot of cultish things like Mormonism and Jehovah's Witnesses and fucking even I think some Jewish communities and Islamic communities all around in America, like you will get disowned by the family, the church, and the entire community. All your friends and everybody you know, your entire fucking neighborhood, depending on where you live, will fucking disown you. Hell, if you're part of the Church of Scientology, those motherfuckers will literally stalk you with a black van outside your house and put, like, threatening letters in your mailbox to keep you silent about anything you might know about the church. Yeah, like... we're also talking about religious groups that will ostracize you and destroy your life if you dare to opt for divorce, especially as a woman. So, yeah, the divorce rates are lower, but consider that as a factor.
The rates of contraceptive use plummet. The rates of childbirth go through the roof. And
because these things are mandatory as decreed by religious law. You're not going to sell me on like dedicating my soul to like serving God.
So the reason I pick that group out more than the others is they seem to have all of the pieces that I'm talking about here, and whereas others they might have one but not two, you know, or they might have three.
I would love to bring up the fact that in communities where you have strong religious roots, low rates of abortion, and high birth rates, you also have enormously high rates of child hunger. I love bringing... When conservatives want to talk about birth rates, I'll say, okay, well, if we're so concerned about these children, how do you feel about giving children free lunches? Because I have the statistics here about child hunger in America. 1 in 5 children, like, goes hungry for like days at a time sometimes. The stats for child hunger in this country are very high, and the rates are the highest in these rural, heavily Christian, high birth rate, low abortion rate, low contraceptive use communities. So, do you think that maybe that's a problem? Do you think that like it's a good thing that these families are having lots of kids when they're having lots of hungry kids that they can't feed? Or, I mean, hell, if you want to keep them having kids, are you in favor of government-sponsored, tax-funded free lunches and guaranteed free meals for families with kids? Are you in favor of food stamps? Are you in favor of welfare? That's when you start, like, attacking the obvious hypocrisies in their worldview as a whole to make them stumble. Because they know they have these hypocrisies. They rely on you being too polite not to point them out, assuming they're good faith enough that you just don't point out the meta arguments that are sitting right in front of you. Like, wait a second, you claim to be pro-life, but you're against free school lunch for children, you fucking monster. How can you claim these two things? Like, point that out.
So there, it's much harder to compare.
How do you make people more Catholic?
Well, you know, I'm doing my best, aren't I?
Yeah, you are.
I'm doing my very best.
If it doesn't work, what's your plan B?
It's not working too well. Anyway, this is your first peek at the Progressive Victory Progressive PV Highlights channel. Once again, I'll go ahead and drop a link to the channel in the chats really fast so you guys can go... fuck me. For some reason, my chat that I have open on the side of my other screen is not letting me post things. It tells me I'm not logged in. So I have to post it in my other chat. But there we go. Put that there. Drop the link there. And there will, of course, be a link down below in the description of this video so that you guys can go sub to the channel. Please go sub to the PV Spotlight channel. You're going to see a lot of content from me on there, and it's going to act as kind of like a lefty YouTuber hub channel. Like, it's not just clips from me. It's going to be clips from all sorts of lefty content creators, including ones you don't know about yet, and ones that are going to be, like, budding up and growing over the next, like, months and years, you know? So you might discover your next favorite content creator through this channel. This is the like highlight channel for lefty content creators, and it's going to get really big. So hop on board quick, because if you're looking for a new lefty channel to listen to and you're bored, you're always going to have a good smorgasbord of different content creators to pick from on this channel. And it's going to be specifically their spiciest, juiciest, most entertaining clips that are sorted and uploaded onto this channel. So I really think you guys are going to like it. If you like me, if you're subbed to me, this channel is up your alley, and you should really go subscribe. But yeah, please go check it out.